Hey everybody, and welcome to this video where I'll be taking a deeper dive than usual into my new favorite backend, Pocketbase, which is probably a dangerous thing to say because there are so many stable options out there like Directus and Supabase and Parse Server that are easier to integrate arguably with Noodle as well. But and also the Pocketbase is still in beta mode. There's no official version 1 release yet. But even though it's not officially released, it's still one of my favorite backends to use at the moment, especially for prototypes or MVPs. Just want to get something up and running quickly with little fuss. That's, for me right now, it's Pocketbase. So I want to take you through how to set up Pocketbase and then a few of the things that I've learned in trying to integrate it with Noodle successfully. This app that I'm showing you here is actually a demo app that we've built with a client colleague of mine that uses Pocketbase as a backend and is using a RAG AI system in LangChain, LangFlow as its main method of receiving and sending messages to create an AI chat. So let's just go through from the basics. First of all, where do we get Pocketbase and how do we set it up? So Pocketbase is open source. Just hit up github/pocketbase/pocketbase and you will find very nice documentation, very simple. If you just want to set it up on your local machine to test it out, it's the simplest one that I've ever used, which involves just going to the releases page, get whatever one is not RC, no release candidates. I would recommend not because they're obviously not stable yet. Go to whatever the most recent release is. So here it's on the date of making this video, it's 0.22. Go in there and get whatever the installer you want to use is. Not even an installer, sorry, it's just a binary executable. So you can do, for me it's Mac, so I'm on Darwin AMD, ARM64 because I'm on an M1 processor. You could get with the Linux installers or Windows installer. It's nice that it has Linux installers because that's something I'm asked about a lot. And also because it means that in theory you could just use this installer. If you were going to set it up on your own server, you could just use this installer to set it up on an Ubuntu server or a Debian server. That would just be as simple as getting it on the server, cloning the project maybe, or just loading the file into the server somehow. And then setting a start script with system control that runs that executable on startup, and it's there's even no configuration. Like you'll see how I did it on my computer. It was just /pocketbase serve, and it just loads up straight away. I've never had any problems. Never had it spit out some stupid error or whatever like I've had with a lot of other backends. Directus, I love it, but setting it up is a pain in the butt. This is just a one line and you're good. So if you're a no coder or you're a bit afraid of getting into DevOps, you couldn't have anything simpler than this. So I really like that for getting started quickly. So yeah, get in there, set it up. If you want to set it up yourself on your server and you would rather make a script to maybe have a bit more control, there's some models that are really easy to use. You can even just copy paste this into ChatGPT if you're not comfortable with server-side coding and get it to make some small modifications if you need some small modifications. There's an example-based project here that they recommend using when you're doing something in production, where it gives you a lot of different possible arguments and things you can pass to the script before it starts up. But in the end, it's all doing the same thing. It's all starting just a Pocketbase server. So once we've got that set up, then you should be able to load into it. And just taking a quick look over some of the basic setup of Pocketbase collections. It also does have storage somewhere, but I can't remember where it is. There is a storage service, I'm pretty sure. Certainly there's S3 storage. So if you do want to use file storage, it's either the local file system or you can enable S3 and use your own S3 storage. So I'm using either AWS at the moment, I'm using a lot, or if you're doing it locally, you could use Min.io, which is an open source S3 storage solution. If you wanted to have a little bit more control over file storage, you could use something like that. It allows logins and permissions for buckets and things like that. The server that I'm using at the moment, Contabo, which I'm using for my Noodl hosting project, is also has an S3 compatible storage, so that could also be set up here. So it doesn't have to be AWS; it could be whatever provider you want. Maybe with force pass style if it's not AWS, for example. Anyway, so let's not do that. So about collections, anyway, the main thing is the data. It's based on SQLite, so it's very SQL style, where we can create a collection with different fields. The cool thing is that it mixes a little bit the features of something like Directus, where, for example, I have relation fields, so it's just a standard thing with one or many relationships, text fields, and it automatically creates ID, created and updated. Other fields that I have that are cool are, for example, choice fields. So this is a field where it's like enum, I suppose, in classic databases, where I've just defined which results it can be. It doesn't really change much. It just means development-wise, you can be sure that, like today, I was making a new message, like a promotional message in my app, and I sent the agent promo, but I hadn't added it to the list yet. And so it threw an error and said this is not an allowed option. So it's just for the developer to be able to be sure that you have your enum list is really solid and that you can't be sending anything with capital letters or whatever that would mess up your potential filtering in the future. So, if you query, then you're definitely going to be querying one of these three options. And the same with feedback as well, or text fields. But yeah, they have a good choice of text fields. They have rich text editors, which means that you could allow people, potentially if you wanted like Directus to allow users to have access to your backend, then you could actually give them a rich text field so they could type, manually type up a blog post or something directly into Pocketbase, and then it would appear in the front end because they've typed it in rich text that's going to be saved as HTML and displayed in the front end as HTML as well. File fields, like I said, so there is file storage. JSON, which is always really nice to be able to store some objects if you want to create your own type of NoSQL style storage. And yeah, all the classic stuff, not as much as Directus obviously, but it's not really designed to be a kind of give everybody access backend. It's really just a standard backend as a service. And then once you've set up your collection, don't forget to look over the API rules. So talking about permissions, you can look up the Pocketbase filter options. So it'll show you how to write the syntax. So for example, if you want to make sure that people who want to search, query this collection are definitely people who, for example, they can only query things that they've made. So you've maybe got a field called author, and the ID of the author, you want to make sure it's the same as the ID of the user, of the auth, which is the user in Pocketbase, who made the request to the backend. And maybe also that it's an active post or whatever, it's a blog post, something like that. So you can see how that works. It's kind of JavaScript style API filters for permissions, which is really handy. But once you've set up a collection, make sure you go in here because it'll automatically be set to admins only, and you'll need to click. So for on how to set up the rules. So that is that for setting up collections. Now, the newer versions of Pocketbase have system collections here. So you can actually open and view, for example, in users, you'll see there's no users at the moment, but you can actually view the admin users here, which is actually a user in the database. It's just not listed in users. So it has an ID and I can log in using that email and my password for Pocketbase. I can actually log in from the front end as well. And it's not in the users collection, but in future versions of Pocketbase I've seen already, they're going to have a systems collection section. So you'll be able to see admin users and those kind of things. What else can I say about this? Your access to Pocketbase, this base URL is important. you're going to need to take this from your Pocketbase instance, wherever it is, localhost or stored in the cloud, and use that here in your project in the head code of the project. The head code is very simple. It's just to import Pocketbase from the unpackaged link, which is the easiest one with the latest version, and have, or you can obviously set a version if you have, especially because this is in beta alpha testing. It might be good to actually set a version. So 0.22.22 could be a good version to go with at the moment. And then just attach a Pocketbase variable to the window. A Pocketbase property to the window, and use the command that they give you, new Pocketbase, to create that object at the window level, so that you can access all of the different parts of the SDK, of the JavaScript SDK, from anywhere within your app. So you need that link I was telling you about here to initiate your Pocketbase instance, and that's it. It's up and running, and then it's going to run based on whether, if you're doing a query, is it public read write, or is it actually user access protected? And so then we should check what the auth ID of the user is and compare that to the creator of the data or the author of the blog post or whatever. So there's nothing else to do here except setting it up like that. And if you've, for testing, gone into your collections and set up that the conversation class is public, so everyone can have access, then we can already start testing and going into, for example, when the user loads up my app, I query, where is it? At the app level, I query, is it? Somewhere, where I query the conversations that have already happened. Where did it go? So, oh no, left menu, that's why it's in the left menu. So yeah, this list of conversations is a result of this query. So what I've done here, and it's really easy to set up, this might look complicated, but I promise you, like, even if you're a no coder, this is somewhat of a no-brainer if you're happy to use Gemini or GPT to help you with the code. So if you want to query the conversations, we go into API preview. We look at the JavaScript SDK here. We can also look at the parameters here if we need to insert more parameters into what we're doing here. It gives you some nice easy examples. You can ignore this part at the top. We don't need to assign Pocketbase to a variable because we've already assigned it to the window, which is the way that Noodle will let you use it inside functions. And then take the this part, for example. So let's just say we want to get 50 conversations created between whatever date and whatever date. Or yeah, we can just do the full list. Let's just do the full list. That's, you know, the filters are important, but let's just do a full list, or do a full list with an expanded field. That's a nice idea. So we'll take that into our code, and we can just add that into a function. If you just want to do the really basic way, add it into a function. The PB is already, Pocketbase object is already defined, so we don't need to do anything with that. And then we just do outputs dot record, and we assign that to the record that's going to be getting this. So when we get conversations, what we want to do is we're not going to have a filter, or yeah, we can get one maybe result. Fetch only the first record that matches the specified filter. Some field equals test. So we can say new conversation. Let's get any of them where the title is equal new conversation. And we're going to expand the field messages. I wonder will that work? Expanding is like saying I want to have the actual full message, not just the ID of the message. And it's messages. Okay, let's see what happens. So outputs, record, messages. No, it didn't work. That's okay. Oh, it did work. Sorry, expand. There we go. Yeah, so that was here's a learning point. When Pocketbase returns results to your Noodle instance, you're going to have to work with the JSON a bit, because you can see here that I have the result. So this is the first result that has the title new conversation. It has the messages field, which is a list of unique IDs, which is great. If you have those queried already, then in Noodle you can say, okay, show me message with the unique ID B7, F1, F5, whatever. And that as an object can be retrieved. So I'll show you that, for example. So if we have a Noodle object, and we use one of the results just as an example. Messages. So say I didn't have the expanded field, say I've queried it somewhere else, then I can just pipe that into here, and then, oh, no, it doesn't work. Okay, great. Oh, I know why. If we had added it to an array, because at the moment it's just returned as basic data from a function, and it hasn't actually picked up on the fact that these are objects in the Noodle ecosystem. It has that ID though, so we need to extract that. One of the easiest ways we can do it is to get an expression node. This is like the kind of lazy way to do it. Instead of just, we can write it in the code, like we could go in here and write, for example, outputs messages equals, and then we have to keep this up so I can see it. Pin that. Expand messages, yeah. So we're gonna go in here and then let's move this over. There we go. Having a big screen is really useful with Noodle, by the way. So we're going to go to records.expand.messages. So that would output the list of messages, or we do the same thing with an expression if we want to, just outside the function, if that helps you to visualize it a bit better. So it would be record.expand.messages would also output the, I'll show you, record would also output the same thing to the array. So you can see there, we have a nice tidy list of messages now. Or we take it directly from the function, as we just created the messages output. Why not take it directly from there? It's a bit cleaner. So it really depends. Like, I like having a lot of visual nodes on the screen with Noodle, but some people would prefer to have it all tidily packaged into single functions. So we're doing everything in the same place and we don't have a big messy canvas. So it just depends on what you prefer. So now these have gone into the Noodle ecosystem of what it recognizes as, oh, this is an ID of an object because it's in one of my arrays, and then the object is populated with the data from that array. So we don't need to do anything more than this to actually be able to use the objects that have been returned. We just need to pipe them into some kind of array. It can even just be a blank array like this, but I've actually named the array so that I can pull it out when I need it. For example, within the left menu, I'm using that array, filtering it, and then piping it into a repeater so that we can see all these conversations here. So that's basic querying with expansion, which is very, very useful. And I find that's something that reminds me of working with Bubble, for example, where I could have said this conversation's messages text, and then I would have been able to pull out nested data from relations, which is a really handy thing to do, and quite easy there. Just by sticking that in the expand field, you can add multiple things with commas. I think that's what it is. There's something else like that. So good. Okay, I could delete all this stuff because it's an actual active app. So one of the things that I learned in doing that was querying, but one of the things I learned in doing work with Pocketbase was so in terms of writing data, there's one thing you have to be careful about, and I'll show you that in the create chat. So there's a create chat message. So when somebody writes a chat message, it goes through a bunch of checks to find out, is there already a conversation or not? Should I create a conversation and then create the message and relate the conversation to the message, etc., etc. So I'll take you through a couple of these, but it's mostly to show you that, for example, when I'm making a new conversation object, so say a new message, for example, it's going to be building that message based on the text, based on the conversation that's actively selected, etc. So let's just like this. So it's once that creates that object, it's going to be an object with an ID, right? So it's a Noodle object that has its own ID that'll be like XYZ123, like it's not very long. That's not going to correspond to what Pocketbase expects in terms of IDs. So one thing we need to do when we're writing new data and when we're updating data is I go through the Noodle objects because I like that as a visual way to create an object. You don't have to. You could write the object directly inside the function and not write it with an ID, and then just put that into your request. So I could have the agent, the message text, and the conversation directly piped into the function, and then construct the object inside the function if I wanted to. But I prefer doing it like this. I like having this, Noodle is about visual programming, and if you're a no coder, you're going to appreciate that a lot more. So we pipe the ID of the object we created into the function where we have our Pocketbase creation, Pocketbase writing function. And what I do is I retrieve the object inside the function. So the object is built outside, and then I retrieve it inside. And then we remove the ID property field from the object, because Pocketbase wants to generate it itself. So we want the object, but without the Noodle assigned ID, which is it's auto created. There's nothing we can do about it. So if you want to go my way, the lazy no code kind of way, then just make sure you add a step where it takes that data object and deletes the ID field, the ID property from the object. And then it will be ready to pass through with the collection name and data. Data is just that object minus the ID. And that's enough to create something in Pocketbase. If it's about messages, it's adding relations. So when we create the object, we have to add a relation, because I have actually got this relational field here where I store the messages so that I can expand them if I need to and just have the conversation plus the messages in one query. So we take the we get the conversation with the messages. I can't remember why I did this. Yeah, we said, okay, we're creating a new object because we want to be able to flatten that out and create an object that has all of the messages in it from the existing conversation. And then how does that work? Oh yeah, so we add our current conversation into the array. We add the current message into the array of messages from this conversation, the corresponding to the expand field that we had before. Then we've got to reload that expanded stuff back into the messages field of the conversation with this same as before, creating an object with a messages field. So that corresponds to how the original record looks with that messages field and the object IDs, not the expand field with all the data. We don't want that. We want the messages with the object IDs to create that relation. And then we're just doing update. So we do record ID and data, and the data is the object that we've just created with that messages field. No other fields unless you want to update the name or something like that. And then delete the ID as we did before. So because we want to insert the object by putting the ID here in the function, whatever the record ID is, not having the ID in the object, the data object. The data object has to just have fields that like created or updated or whatever. Sorry, not created, updated. We have to have fields like messages and title, and then insert the ID here so that it knows which record to update and what data to put in that update. We're never updating the ID that's fixed and immutable. So again, another thing where we have to delete the ID. And so those are the main things that I learned from using Pocketbase in Noodle certainly for writing and updating data. That's something that's really important. The other things that people are going to want to know about are authentication. So how does authentication work in Pocketbase? If we go into the app level, where was it? I prepared a little example. So at the moment, I'm just doing local storage for this app. I'm not using any kind of authentication, but I wanted to do an example to show how it works. So when you want to know if a user is logged in, there is a series of different values that we can get from the Pocketbase object in another object that's called Auth store. And so when you authenticate with Pocketbase, when you use some sort of login or sign up feature with Pocketbase, or let's say login, the sign up doesn't actually change the auth store. We have to sign up and then log in. So we sign the user up and then log them in, or we just log them in. An auth store object is created, and it'll have a token. So that this is retrievable by Pocketbase because it's stored in cookies. I can't remember if it's cookies or local storage, but Pocketbase automatically stores it in the user's cookies or local storage. And then we, through the Pocketbase.auth store, can access that from local storage or cookies and pull out the token, and also pull out are they authenticated or not? So if it is valid, then they're authenticated, and we can pull out whatever the token is just to have that available if we need it. And then any subsequent calls to from like Pocketbase.write or whatever will use that token to authenticate, to show what the ID of the user is and whether they have a valid session, because their token corresponds to a session that's valid. So that's the basics. What I do is I create an object called current user, Noodl objects current user, and I assign token to whatever the token is and authenticate it to true. And it means then I think I had that in my prefab example, which I may have already shown. At the app level, there we go. So we check the auth store, and then we assign those things to the user, and then the current user object gets a token and whether they've been authenticated or not. And then I decide, okay, they're authenticated, I'll send them to the home page. So that's the basic system for authenticating with Pocketbase. Now, how do you authenticate, you say? Well, it's not too difficult at all, because Pocketbase makes it all super easy for you. So let's go into the home page. So I have a login function that I've created to show one particular kind of logging in, because if you go to users and API preview, it's going to show you all the different ways that you can authenticate the user. So the easiest is going to be the auth with password, or where's the sign up. Oh yeah, it was create, of course. We want to create a user, we do create. So the sign up is through the create API. So we're going to copy this part with a username, password, etc. And then that's going to create a user in the database. It does not log them in automatically. You still have to do the auth. So you're going to have to sign them up with their username, password, and then immediately afterwards do an auth with password. That'll then give us the pb.auth store. You can easily get it from here if you want to get the data that you want, and output that if you need to, or what I did, assign it to an object. And so that's as straightforward as that, nothing else to do. Just have the errors properly. What I like to do is put these codes through GPT and tell it, can you put this through a try catch, and then have the catch output errors. So if the API returns an error, then we can output that and show a pop-up to say, sorry, you couldn't log in because your email is already in use, or something like that. So Pocketbase will return the errors that you need to display to the user. Now, the thing that everybody's always asking about, which I understand, is how do I integrate Google login or Facebook login with my app? This, for me, seems to be one of the easiest ways I've ever seen it implemented. It's a one-liner. So we take this line, PB collection users, auth with Oauth 2, provider, and then whatever the provider name is will come from settings, auth providers, and then the name in parentheses is the value that you should put into what I just showed you there, the auth provider. So I've got one set up as an example, which is Google. I've put in the client ID and client secret from just a test app. It's nothing important. It's in test mode anyway, and I'm the only user. I ran into issues with Google OAuth, which I talked about in a previous video, which somebody told me is not really a problem, and that's my fault for not knowing how to do it, which is possible. But it was that having the redirect URI as localhost was not applicable to, was not allowed in Google OAuth land. So be sure to read this part here, where it says, make sure to register OAuth to redirect as the redirect URL. So this will give you wherever your client is currently hosted, automatically put in here. So you just copy paste that into Google or whatever as the redirect URL. And then we can go into the Noodle app where I've set up that function. So I just copy pasted, like I haven't done anything with it yet. I haven't, there's things where you can add manual OAuth code exchange if you want to do that for whatever reason. There's a way to do it as well, but I just want it to be as quick and simple as possible. So you're not going to be able to run this in the editor because it's just a preview browser. It's not going to actually show you any pop-ups and stuff like that. It doesn't have a pop-up engine. So you're going to want to load that up in here, localhost 8574 is where your Noodle preview is running. So we can access that. Click login, and it's as simple as that. And now if we have a look at our console, there we go. So is valid is true, there's the token and the model ID, whatever that is, maybe the user ID. And so if we go into our user space, there I am, and there's my ID indeed. So that was what I said, I wasn't wrong for once. Where are we? Okay, it didn't work. Oh yeah, because I'm in the wrong freaking editor. So the ID of the user that's outputted from that login, from that sign up OAuth process, is the same ID as the user who was just created. So that's, it's put a random username, it's got my email, hasn't got my name, doesn't matter. We just want the person to be signed up, and then afterwards you can ask them, please input your first name, last name, etc. But I mean, it's just, I've never had it work that quickly and easily. I know maybe you're going to say, oh, it's because you're not very good at OAuth. Yeah, it's possible, but I know a lot of people who are also not very good at OAuth, and that it can be quite confusing. And for Pocketbase, they take care of it so simply with just one line of code. I love it. I mean, it's an SDK, so that's what it's supposed to do, but that there's like that little amount of setup. Pocketbase for me is simplicity. The whole strategy of Pocketbase is just doing things in the simplest way possible, while still exposing the code to you, because it's an open source project. It's written in Go, and there's a vibrant developer community around it. So there's lots of discussions about how to customize your own Pocketbase instance. But for somebody like me who's started as a no coder, become a low coder, this is my dream, just to be able to do it this simply, and then also to have that user auth store object that I can just use to decide if the user is logged in or not is just wonderful. So I don't think there's anything else I can really say about this right now, apart from obviously you have like token options where you can decide what to do with and how long the tokens remain valid. There's also, I found today another day where I had to take a local Pocketbase project and put it on a server. I was able to export everything as a JSON, which is very common with databases, but this is like as easy as it gets. Again, like, it's all about simplicity. These are not amazing new inventions. These are just very simple ways of doing standard database operations. So I export everything in the whole schema in a JSON, and then import it into I imported it into the cloud version, and then automatically had all of the collections there. And then I'm sure there's probably a way to, I've never actually looked to see if there's a way to export the whole database, but maybe there's not yet. Backups maybe? Yeah, could be something to try. I don't know about that yet. But yeah, having backups is nice too, by the way. Yeah, so if you have S3 storage, you can store backups of your whole, Pocketbase server. So it seems on the surface like, oh, maybe it's not very safe, and it's only using SQLite, so how much can it really scale? But we're talking about scaling up to 10,000 active concurrent users in an SQLite database before you would even start thinking about there's a problem. So if you have an app that's already got 10,000 concurrent users, bravo. Pocketbase is going to be the preference of a lot of people. And in the future, I know that there's going to be more updates in terms of being able to do, probably we'll be able to put it over multiple servers and things like that running in concurrency, so that we don't have to scale vertically, but we can actually scale horizontally. So this is just the beginning of the Pocketbase journey. I'm invested in it already, so I hope that this has helped you to think about investing in Pocketbase as well. If I've missed something today, like maybe you really want to see storage, or I haven't really gone through the user authentication system properly, we didn't really look at the API rules and setting up, who can access what. So if there's more that you want to see, absolutely happy to do it. Just don't want to do too long videos. 30 minutes is already good enough. So just put your whatever you want in the comments, or come and check me out in the Open Noodle Discord, where I hang out. And If you feel like getting involved with the OpenNoodle project as well, then feel free to go to the links in my profile and all over the place for the Low Code Foundation, which is the registered charity that I am a part of in France, that has for a mission to promote OpenNoodle and to pay for the further development of OpenNoodle as an open source project. So if you like what you see and you think that OpenNoodle could be the future, feel free to get in touch with me, get into the OpenNoodle Discord, send me an email, send me a comment on YouTube, whatever you want, to talk to me more about that project. I'm always happy to talk about it, how we can improve Noodle in the future and what kind of funds we need to do that. Knowing that the Low Code Foundation is a registered charity in France, and so if your company can receive tax credits from registered charities in France, then this would be a great opportunity to save a bit of money and also to invest in the future of web app development with things like Noodle, using Pocketbase as a awesome fast backend. So I hope this has been interesting for you, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video.